The bidding had reached $1,500 when the little girl's voice shattered everything. "Daddy, that's her. That's the angel from my dreams." 4-year-old Grace Blackwood pointed at the trembling woman on the auction block, and the crowd fell silent. Her father, the ghost of Whispering Pines himself, stepped forward from the shadows. What happened next would change 3 broken lives forever. But before we begin, hit that subscribe button and stay until the end. Comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. Celeste Hartwell's legs wouldn't stop shaking. The wooden platform bit cold through her bare feet. Splinters. She could feel them working into her skin with every shift of weight, but she didn't move. Couldn't move. The morning air sliced through her thin dress, the same dress she'd worn for 3 days straight since her father had locked her in the root cellar, telling her she needed to stay fresh for the buyers. "What am I bid for this one?" The auctioneer's voice boomed across Riverside's town square. "Healthy girl, strong back, good for." "She ain't good for nothing. Look at the size of her." Laughter erupted, sharp, cruel. Celeste's fingernails dug into her palms. The pain helped, kept her from screaming, kept her from running. Where would she even run to? "Let's start at 500, the auctioneer continued. 500 for 300, and that's generous. More laughter. Someone threw something, a pebble maybe, that pinged off the platform near her feet. "Too big for any man to handle. Probably eat you out of house and home. 300 then." The auctioneer sounded bored now. "Do I hear 350? Silence. Celeste kept her eyes locked on the horizon. Her mother had taught her that trick. When the world gets too heavy, baby girl, you find one point far away, and you hold on to it. You hold on until you can breathe again. But breathing hurt. Everything hurt. 300 going once. 400. Her stomach lurched. She knew that voice. Young, eager. The butcher's son who'd cornered her behind the church last summer, who'd grabbed her wrist hard enough to leave bruises, who'd whispered things that still made her skin crawl. 450. Another voice joined in. The bidding had started. Celeste's vision blurred. She blinked hard. Tears would only make them laugh harder. 600. 7. 800, and I'll take her today. Numbers climbed like they meant something, like they could measure the weight of a soul. Her father stood at the edge of the crowd. Elias Hartwell, drunk even this early, swaying slightly, his face flushed with shame that would disappear the moment the gold hit his palm. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Hadn't looked at her once since dragging her from the cellar this morning. "This is business, Celeste. Don't make it harder than it has to be." Business. 23 years of being his daughter, and she'd become business. $1,000. The crowd gasped. A man pushed forward, broad-shouldered, thick-necked, with a smile that made her want to vomit. She'd seen him before. Everyone had. Dutch Carver owned half the saloons in Riverside and all of the brothels. His hands were clean, but his money was filthy. 1,000, the auctioneer repeated, suddenly interested again. "Do I hear 1,100? 1,100, someone shouted from the back. Dutch's smile vanished. He spun, searching for his competition. 1,200, his voice carried rage now. 13, 1,500, 16, 17. The numbers blurred together. Celeste's knees buckled. She caught herself, fingers grabbing the wooden post beside her. The wood was rough, real, something to hold on to while the world spun. $1,800. Dutch Carver's final bid rang out like a death sentence. The crowd murmured. 1,800 was a fortune, was more than most men would see in 5 years of breaking their backs. Celeste's throat closed. 1,800. Dutch Carver owned her for $1,800. 1,800 going once, the auctioneer called. Her father finally looked up. Their eyes met across the distance. Celeste waited for something, regret, hesitation, anything that proved she'd mattered even a little. Elias looked away first. Going twice. Daddy, that's her. The voice cut through everything. Small, clear, certain. "That's the angel from my dreams." Celeste's head snapped toward the sound. A little girl was running through the crowd, dark curls bouncing, tiny feet kicking up dust. She couldn't have been more than 4, wearing a patched dress that someone had mended with careful stitches. But her face, God, her face was pure light. "Daddy." The child pointed directly at Celeste. "It's her, the one I told you about." The crowd parted, and death itself stepped through. That's what Jeremiah Blackwood looked like in that moment. 6'4" of mountain-hardened muscle and silence. Dark hair past his shoulders. Beard thick and wild. Eyes the color of winter storms. He moved through the crowd like they weren't even there, and they scattered without a word. The ghost of Whispering Pines. Celeste had heard the stories. Everyone had. The widower who lived so high in the mountains that snow covered his cabin 6 months of the year, who came to town twice a year and spoke to no one, who'd once broken a man's arm for touching his daughter's hair. Grace. His voice was quiet thunder. "Come here." But the little girl was already climbing the platform steps. The auctioneer moved to stop her. Jeremiah's eyes shifted to him. The auctioneer froze. Grace reached Celeste and grabbed her hand. Her tiny fingers were warm against Celeste's ice-cold skin. "You're even prettier than in my dreams," Grace whispered, smiling up at her. "The angels said you were sad. They said you needed us." Celeste's breath caught. "I don't—" "Grace." Jeremiah was beside them now. Up close he was impossibly large. He knelt to his daughter's level, and even kneeling he was taller than most men standing. "Sweetheart, we can't just—" "Please, Daddy." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "She's scared. Look at her hands. They're shaking so bad. The angels said she needs somewhere safe." Jeremiah looked up at Celeste. Really looked. And she felt him seeing past the platform, past the crowd's mockery, past everything, and seeing her. Actually, her. "How much?" He stood, his voice flat. 1,800 is the current 2,000. Jeremiah pulled a leather pouch from inside his coat and threw it. The pouch hit the platform with a heavy thud. Gold coins spilled out, glinting in the morning sun. "Count it. I'm taking her now." The crowd erupted. "Now hold on." Dutch Carver pushed forward, his face purple with rage. "I was bidding, you can't just—" Jeremiah turned. He didn't speak, didn't move, just looked at Dutch. Whatever Dutch saw in those storm cloud eyes made him take 3 steps back, then 4, then disappear into the crowd like smoke. The auctioneer's hands shook as he counted the coins. Once, twice. He nodded. "Sold. To Jeremiah Blackwood." Jeremiah turned back to Celeste. He held out his hand. "Can you walk?" Celeste stared at his hand. Rough, scarred, twice the size of hers. And her voice broke. "Yes." She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm, solid, steady. He helped her down from the platform, and the moment her feet hit solid ground, her legs gave out completely. Jeremiah caught her, one arm behind her back, supporting her weight like she was nothing. "I've got you," he said simply. Grace wrapped her small arms around Celeste's leg. "It's okay, Angel. Daddy never drops anything precious." Celeste tried to speak. Couldn't. Her throat was too tight. Jeremiah lifted her, actually lifted her, all of her, and carried her toward a wagon at the edge of the square. She wanted to protest, wanted to say she could walk, but her body had stopped obeying hours ago. "Wait!" Elias. Hartwell pushed through the crowd, stumbling. He grabbed Jeremiah's arm. "That's my daughter. You can't just take her. I have rights. I'm her father." Jeremiah stopped. He carefully set Celeste down in the wagon bed, made sure she was steady, then turned to face Elias. "You sold her." Jeremiah's voice could have frozen fire. "You put her on that block. You took money for her." He stepped closer. "You stopped being her father the moment you set a price on her soul. But the money I need, you need to leave." Jeremiah's hand moved to the knife at his belt. Not threatening. Just there. You need to walk away before I forget I'm supposed to be civilized. Elias looked past him to Celeste. You ungrateful, after everything you... What? Celeste's voice surprised even herself. Strong. Clear. After you drank away Mama's inheritance. After you locked me in the cellar for 3 days. After you sold me like a cow. She leaned forward. I hope it burns, Papa. Every coin. I hope it burns your hands. Something flickered across Elias's face. Shame, maybe. Or just anger that his property was talking back. He spat at her feet and disappeared into the crowd. Jeremiah climbed into the wagon. Grace scrambled up beside him immediately, reaching back to hold Celeste's hand. We're going home now, Grace announced, to Whispering Pines. It's the most beautiful place in the whole world. Jeremiah clicked his tongue. The horses moved. The crowd watched in silence as the ghost of Whispering Pines drove away with his daughter and his $2,000 purchase. But Celeste didn't feel purchased. For the first time in years, she felt something else. Something she was afraid to name. The wagon climbed into the mountains. Celeste sat in the back, wrapped in a thick blanket that smelled like pine and wood smoke. Grace sat beside her, talking non-stop. I'm 4. My birthday was last month, and Daddy made me a cake with honey because we don't have sugar, but honey's better anyway. Do you like honey? I hope you do, because we have lots. Daddy knows where all the bee trees are, and he talks to the bees, and they don't sting him ever, and... Grace, Jeremiah's voice from the driver's seat. Breathe. I am breathing. I'm just telling Angel about... Let the woman rest. But Celeste didn't want rest. Grace's voice was the only thing keeping her tethered. Without it, she'd drift back to the platform, to the crowd, to her father's face as he looked away. It's okay, Celeste said quietly. I like hearing about the bees. Grace beamed. See Daddy, she likes it. She turned back to Celeste, lowering her voice. My mama died when I was little. I don't remember much. Just pieces. But then you started coming to my dreams. Celeste's chest tightened. Grace, every night for a week. You were there, and you were crying, and the angels were all around you saying, she needs help, she needs you. Grace squeezed her hand. And I told Daddy, and he didn't believe me at first, but then... Grace. Jeremiah called again. Warning now. But then he started building you a room, Grace finished quickly. So I knew he believed, even if he didn't say so. Celeste looked at Jeremiah's back. Broad. Tense. You built a room before you even... seemed practical, Jeremiah said, not turning around. If the dreams were right, we'd need space. If they were wrong, I'd have a storage room. But his ears were red. Grace giggled. Daddy doesn't like admitting when he has feelings. Daddy has plenty of feelings about daughters who talk too much. The wagon climbed higher. The air grew colder, thinner, cleaner. Celeste watched Riverside disappear below them, a smudge of smoke and shame getting smaller with every turn of the wheels. Good. Let it disappear. Let it all disappear. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it. Why did you pay so much? You don't even know me. Jeremiah was quiet for a long moment. The only sound was hooves on dirt and wind through trees. My wife died 3 years ago, he finally said. Fever took her in 2 days. She was fine one morning, and by the next evening she was gone. His voice was flat, carefully controlled. Left me with a baby who needed her mama and a cabin that felt too damn big. Grace laid her head on Celeste's shoulder. This was a story she'd heard before. Been just me and Grace since then, and I thought... He paused. I thought I could be enough, thought I could give her everything she needed. But then the dreams started. About me. About someone. Jeremiah's shoulders tensed. Grace would wake up smiling, saying an angel was coming, someone who needed us as much as we needed her, and I told myself it was just a child's imagination, just wishful thinking. But you built the room anyway. But I built the room anyway. He glanced back and his eyes were different now, softer, tired. Started going to town every week, told myself I was checking supplies. But really I was looking, didn't know for what, but I was looking. The wagon hit a rut. Celeste grabbed the side to steady herself. Then I heard about the auction, Jeremiah continued. Heard Elias Hartwell was selling his daughter, and something in my gut said go, said get there. So I did. And Grace saw me. And Grace saw you? Jeremiah's voice dropped. Ran forward before I could stop her. And when she looked up at you, when she said you were the angel from her dreams. He shook his head. I've seen my daughter's face every day for 4 years. Never seen her look like that. Like she'd found something she'd been missing her whole life. Celeste felt tears burn her eyes. What if I'm not what you think? What if I can't? Can't what? Jeremiah pulled the horses to a stop. He turned to face her fully. Can't be perfect. Can't fix everything. Can't be some magical solution. He held her gaze. I'm not asking you to be anything except alive. You're here because Grace saw you, and because you needed help, and because... He stopped, started again. You're here because you belong here, however that looks, whatever that means. We'll figure it out. Together, Grace added sleepily. Together. Jeremiah agreed. He turned back around, clicked his tongue. The horses moved. Celeste pulled Grace closer. The little girl's warmth seeped into her side, chasing away some of the cold. Not all of it. Maybe not ever all of it. But some. That was enough for now. Time blurred. The wagon rocked. Grace's breathing evened out into sleep. The trees grew thicker, taller, blocking out more and more of the sky until they were traveling through a tunnel of green. Celeste's eyes drifted closed. She jerked awake when the wagon stopped. We're here. Grace was already scrambling down, suddenly full of energy again. Come on, Angel, I want to show you everything. Jeremiah helped Celeste out of the wagon. Her legs were stiff, numb. She stumbled, and his hand caught her elbow. Easy, he said. You've been sitting for hours. Celeste looked up. The cabin stood in a clearing surrounded by pines so tall they seemed to touch the clouds. Smoke drifted from a stone chimney. A small garden lay dormant beside the house. A swing hung from a massive oak tree swaying slightly in the breeze. But it was the sound that caught her wind, moving through pine needles, creating a whisper that rose and fell like breathing. Whispering pines, Grace said proudly. That's why it's called that. The trees talk if you listen. Come on. Jeremiah's hand was still on her elbow, steady. You're frozen. Let's get you inside. The door opened smoothly. Heat hit Celeste like a wall fire in the hearth, herbs drying from the rafters, the smell of bread and coffee and wood smoke. Home. The word appeared in her mind before she could stop it. Your room's this way. Jeremiah led her down a short hallway. He opened a door. Celeste stepped inside and stopped breathing. A bed. A real bed with a quilt spread across it. A window looking out at the pines. A small table with a basin. A chest at the foot of the bed. Grace picked the quilt. Jeremiah said quietly. Said it needed to be soft. Celeste walked to the bed, sat down slowly. The mattress gave beneath her feathers, not straw. Something that had cost real money. I don't understand any of this, she whispered. Jeremiah leaned against the doorframe. For the first time since she'd met him, he looked uncertain. I'm not good with words, he said finally. Never have been. My wife used to say I could go 3 days without talking if left alone. He rubbed his beard. But I know what it's like to feel like the world's too heavy to carry. Know what it's like to wake up and wonder why you're bothering. And I know... He stopped. Started again. I know what it's like to need someone to tell you that you matter. Celeste looked up at him. Do I matter? You mattered enough for my daughter to dream about you for a week straight. You mattered enough for me to spend everything I'd saved for 5 years. You mattered enough. His voice roughened. You matter. Period. Not because of what you can do or who you can be. You just matter. Grace appeared in the doorway dragging a rag doll. Are you staying? Are you really staying? Celeste looked at this child who'd dreamed of her, at this man who'd built her a room, at this cabin that already felt safer than anywhere she'd ever been. Yes, she heard herself say. I'm staying. Grace shrieked with joy and launched herself forward. Celeste caught her, lifting her up, and the little girl immediately wrapped her arms around her neck. I knew it, Grace whispered fiercely. The angels promised. They never lie. Over Grace's dark curls, Celeste met Jeremiah's eyes. He was watching them with an expression that made her chest ache, relief and hope and something else. Something tender. Thank you, she mouthed. He nodded once, turned to leave. At the door he paused. Celeste. Yes, you're safe here. He still didn't turn around. Whatever happened before, whoever hurt you, they can't reach you in Whispering Pines. I give you my word. Daddy always keeps his promises, Grace said against her neck. Always, always, always. The door closed softly. Celeste sat on the bed holding Grace and cried. Not from fear, not from pain, from something else entirely. Night fell. Grace had finally fallen asleep in her own bed after making Celeste promise 3 times that she'd still be there in the morning. Celeste stood in her room staring out the window at the darkening pines. A soft knock on the door. Come in, she said quietly. Jeremiah entered carrying a tray. Bread, cheese, a cup of something that steamed in the cold air. You didn't eat, he said. Figured you might be hungry. Celeste took the tray. Her hands shook slightly. Thank you. He nodded, started to leave. Jeremiah. He stopped. Why did you really buy me? The question came out smaller than she'd intended. And don't say it was just because of Grace's dreams. There's more. I can see it. Jeremiah was quiet for a long moment. His hand rested on the doorframe, and she could see his knuckles were white. When my wife died, he finally said, I wanted to die too. Didn't see the point of going on, but Grace needed me, so I kept breathing. Kept waking up, kept pretending I was alive. He turned to face her. And then a month ago I realized I'd stopped pretending. Realized I'd started actually living again. And I thought about what changed, and all I could think was Grace's dreams. Grace talking about angels and hope, and someone coming who needed us. He took a breath. So when I saw you on that platform, saw the way they were treating you, saw your father looking away, like you didn't matter. His jaw clenched. I thought about what it would mean if Grace's dreams were wrong. If no angel came. If we just kept existing in this cabin, the two of us slowly forgetting what it felt like to be a real family. And I couldn't let that happen. His eyes met hers. So maybe I bought you for Grace. Or maybe I bought you for me. Or maybe... He paused. Maybe I bought you because the moment Grace pointed at you I knew. Just knew. That if I walked away, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. Celeste's throat was too tight to speak. Jeremiah nodded once, like he'd said what he needed to say. He turned to leave. Jeremiah. Yeah. I'm glad you didn't walk away. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, but close. Me too, he said quietly. The door closed. Celeste sat on the bed holding the cup of tea he'd brought her. It was sweet. Honey, not sugar. Warmth spread through her hands, her chest, her bones. Outside the pines whispered their secrets to the wind. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Celeste felt something that might have been peace. She woke to screaming. Not Grace Jeremiah. Celeste bolted upright, heart pounding. The scream came again, raw, broken, the sound of someone trapped in a nightmare they couldn't escape. She threw off the quilt and ran. His door was open. Grace stood in the hallway, tears streaming down her face. "He has bad dreams sometimes," Grace whispered. "About Mama dying. I usually sing to him, but tonight it's really bad, and I don't know." Celeste pushed past her into Jeremiah's room. He was thrashing in the bedsheets tangled around him, his face twisted in agony. Sweat soaked his hair. "Sarah," he gasped. "Sarah, please don't, please." Celeste didn't think. She grabbed his shoulders. "Jeremiah, Jeremiah, wake up. You're dreaming. It's just a dream." His eyes snapped open, wild, unfocused. His hand shot up, grabbing her wrist hard enough to bruise. "Hey," she said firmly. "It's Celeste. You're in your cabin. Grace is safe. You're safe." Recognition slowly filtered into his eyes. His grip loosened. "Celeste?" His voice was wrecked. "What? You were having a nightmare." He sat up quickly, breathing hard. Looked past her to where Grace stood in the doorway crying. "Sweetheart, I'm..." His voice broke. "I'm okay. Come here." Grace ran forward. Jeremiah pulled her into his lap, holding her tight. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I'm so sorry, baby girl. Daddy's okay." "You were calling for Mama," Grace sobbed. "You sounded so scared." I know, but it's over now." He looked up at Celeste, standing awkwardly beside the bed. "Thank you. I didn't do anything. You woke me up. That's more than..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "That's more than I usually get." Celeste sat on the edge of the bed. "How often does this happen?" "Couple times a week." Jeremiah's hand smoothed over Grace's hair. "Less now than before, but sometimes..." He closed his eyes. "Sometimes I'm back there, watching her die, and I can't do anything, can't save her, can't even hold her hand because I'm holding Grace, and if I put her down, she'll see her mother dying and..." "Daddy, stop." Grace pressed her tiny hand to his cheek. "Mama's with the angels now. She's not hurting anymore." "I know, sweetheart. I know." But his hands were still shaking. Celeste made a decision. "Grace," she said quietly, "go get your doll, the one you showed me earlier." Grace looked up. "Why?" "Because we're having a sleepover. All three of us. Right here." Jeremiah's eyes widened. "You don't have to." "I know I don't have to, but I'm going to." She met his gaze. "You gave me a safe place. Let me give you one too, just for tonight." He stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. Gratitude, maybe. Or just exhaustion. "Okay," he whispered. Grace ran to get her doll. Celeste settled on one side of the bed. Jeremiah stayed on the other. When Grace returned, she burrowed between them, clutching her doll. "This is nice," Grace said sleepily. "Like a real family." Jeremiah's hand found Celeste's across Grace's sleeping form. His fingers wrapped around hers, tentative, questioning. She squeezed back. "Answer." "Thank you," he mouthed. She nodded. Outside, the pines whispered their secrets. Inside, three broken people held on to each other in the dark. And somewhere far below in Riverside, Dutch, Carver stared into his whiskey glass and made a decision. Nobody took what was his. Nobody. He'd get her back, one way or another. Morning came too fast. Celeste woke to find Grace's small body pressed against her side and Jeremiah already gone. The space where he'd slept was cold. He'd been up for hours. Grace stirred, yawning. "Is Daddy making breakfast?" "I think so." "He makes really good porridge, not like the lumpy kind. His is smooth and he puts honey in it and sometimes berries if we have them. Grace sat up, her hair a wild mess of curls. Do you know how to cook, Angel? Celeste's chest tightened. Yes. My mother taught me before she died. Then you can teach me. Daddy tries, but he says girl things are hard, and I should learn from a lady. And now you're here, so... Grace grabbed her hand. Come on, I want to show you the kitchen. They found Jeremiah at the stove stirring a pot. He'd changed clothes, clean shirt, hair tied back. He looked up when they entered, and something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe. Or gratitude that she hadn't run during the night. Morning, he said quietly. Morning. Celeste helped Grace into a chair at the table. Can I help? Almost done. He ladled porridge into 3 bowls, set them down. Eat. Then I need to check the traps. Grace usually comes with me, but... I'll stay with her, Celeste said quickly, if that's okay? Jeremiah studied her face. You sure she can be... a lot? I'm not a lot, Grace protested through a mouthful of porridge. I'm just the right amount. Despite everything, Celeste felt her lips twitch, almost a smile. I'm sure. Jeremiah nodded. He ate standing up, fast and efficient, like a man used to working alone. When he finished, he grabbed his coat from beside the door. I'll be back by noon. There's wood by the fire if you get cold. Don't go past the garden without me. The forest can be tricky if you don't know the paths. He paused. And if anyone comes, anyone at all, you get Grace and you lock yourselves in the root cellar. Understand? Celeste's stomach dropped. Are you expecting someone? No, but I don't take chances. His eyes were hard. Not with what's mine to protect. He left before she could ask what he meant. Grace scraped the last of her porridge from the bowl. Daddy's always careful. Ever since Mama died, he doesn't trust easy. Says the world's full of people who take more than they give. He's not wrong. But you're different. Grace hopped down from her chair. You give. I can feel it. The angels wouldn't have sent you if you were a taker. Celeste wanted to believe that. Wanted to think she was worth the dreams, worth the gold, worth the room someone had built with careful hands. But belief was hard when you'd spent 23 years learning you were worthless. Come on. Grace tugged her hand. I'll show you where everything is. Then we can make bread. Do you know how to make bread? Daddy's bread is good, but it's always a little too hard, and he says that's just how bread is. But Mama used to make it soft, and I can almost remember how it tasted, and maybe you know how to make it soft. The words tumbled out like water from a broken dam. Celeste let Grace pull her around the cabin, the pantry with its neat rows of preserved vegetables, the herbs hanging to dry, the small room where Grace slept with her rag doll, and a collection of pretty rocks on the windowsill. Daddy says I collect too much, Grace explained, showing Celeste a particularly smooth stone. But I can't help it. Everything's so pretty, and I want to keep it all. They spent the morning making bread. Celeste's hands remembered the motions her mother had taught her, kneading, folding, the gentle rhythm that had nothing to do with strength and everything to do with patience. Grace stood on a chair beside her, flour dusting her nose, laughing every time Celeste let her punch down the dough. You're really good at this, Grace said. Better than Daddy. Don't tell him I said that. I won't. Do you think you'll stay forever? Like really forever? Celeste's hands stilled. I don't know, sweetheart. Forever's a long time. But you're not leaving soon, right? Because Daddy needs you. He doesn't say it, but I can tell. He smiled this morning when he saw you were still here. He hasn't smiled like that in forever. The dough blurred in front of Celeste's eyes. She blinked hard. Let's get this in the oven. Jeremiah returned just as the bread was coming out golden soft, filling the cabin with a smell that made him stop in the doorway. Is that bread? Grace announced proudly. Me and Angel made it, and it's soft, Daddy. Really, really soft. Jeremiah set down 2 rabbits he'd caught, washed his hands in the basin. Grace tore off a piece of bread and shoved it at him. Taste it. He took a bite, chewed slowly, his eyes closed. It's perfect, he said quietly. Just like... He stopped, opened his eyes. It's perfect. Thank you. Celeste knew what he'd almost said, just like Sarah used to make. The words hung in the air between them, unspoken but present. You're welcome. They ate lunch together, bread and cheese, and the rabbits roasted over the fire. Grace chattered the whole time, telling Celeste about the trap lines, the creek where they got water, the cave where Daddy kept the smoked meat for winter. And there's a meadow, Grace said, her eyes lighting up, with flowers in spring. Mama's buried there, under the big oak tree. Daddy carved her name into the trunk so she'd never be forgotten. Jeremiah's jaw tightened. Grace. What? It's true. Grace turned to Celeste. Do you want to see? It's really pretty. Even now with all the snow. Maybe another day, Celeste said gently. Let's clean up lunch first. After the dishes were washed, Grace went down for her nap. The cabin fell into quiet, the kind that felt heavy with things unsaid. Jeremiah stood by the fire, poking at the logs. Celeste sat at the table mending one of Grace's dresses that had torn at the hem. I'm sorry, he finally said. About last night. You shouldn't have had to... Stop. Celeste set down the needle. You don't need to apologize for having nightmares. But I do need to apologize for grabbing you. I saw the bruise on your wrist this morning. I didn't mean... I know you didn't. She stood crossing to him, showed him her wrist, where a faint purple mark circled the bone. It doesn't hurt, and even if it did, I'd still do it again. He stared at the bruise like it was a personal failure. I don't want to be the kind of man who hurts women, even by accident. You're not. You were asleep. You were trapped in a nightmare. That's different. Is it? Yes. She reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand on his arm. You're the kind of man who spent a fortune to save a stranger. The kind who builds rooms for people he's never met. The kind who teaches his daughter about angels and hope, even when you're drowning in your own grief. She squeezed gently. That's who you are, not the man in the nightmare. Jeremiah looked down at her hand on his arm. His other hand came up covering hers. His palm was rough, warm. How are you so sure? Because I've met real monsters. I've lived with one. Celeste met his eyes. And you're nothing like him. They stood there, hands clasped, the fire crackling beside them. Something passed between them, understanding maybe. Or just two broken people recognizing the cracks in each other and deciding they fit together anyway. The moment shattered when someone pounded on the door. Jeremiah's hand went to his knife immediately. Grace's room. Now. But... now. The command in his voice left no room for argument. Celeste ran to Grace's room, shook her awake gently. We need to be quiet, okay? Someone's here. Grace's eyes went wide, but she nodded. She'd lived with her father's caution long enough to know when to listen. The pounding came again. Blackwood. Open up, sheriff's business. Jeremiah cracked the door open. What do you want, Morrison? Need to talk to you about your recent purchase. Celeste's blood turned to ice. She pressed her back against the wall, holding Grace tight. I don't discuss my business with lawmen. Even when your business involves buying a woman who's got legal claims against her. The sheriff's voice was smug. Elias Hartwell filed a complaint, says you stole his property. I paid $2,000 in front of 50 witnesses. That's not theft. No, but harboring a debtor is. See, Elias had promises to keep. People who were counting on that girl to settle accounts. Dutch Carver for one. He's real upset about losing his winning bid. Celeste's hands started shaking. Dutch. Of course it was Dutch. She's not going back. Now Blackwood, be reasonable. You can't just... She's not going back. Jeremiah's voice dropped to something dangerous. You can tell Carver that. You can tell Hartwell. You can tell whoever sent you up this mountain. She stays here. End of discussion. I've got a legal writ. Your writ means nothing up here. This is my land, private property. You're trespassing. You threatening a lawman. I'm stating facts. You've got 30 seconds to get off my property before I consider you a threat to my household." A pause. Then, "This isn't over, Blackwood. Carver's got friends in Riverside. Important friends. He'll get what's his." "She was never his. Now you've got 20 seconds. Footsteps retreated. Hoofbeats faded into the distance. Jeremiah locked the door. Turned to find Celeste standing in the hallway, Grace pressed against her side. "How much did you hear?" "Enough." Celeste's voice shook. "I should go. I should leave before—" "Before what?" "Before Carver sends more men. Before your father tries again." Jeremiah crossed to her. "You're not going anywhere." "But the sheriff said—" "The sheriff's on Carver's payroll. Everyone knows it. He's got no real authority up here, and he knows it." Jeremiah's hand cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "You're staying. We'll figure this out." How do we figure out Dutch Carver wanting his property back?" "You're not property." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You're a person under my protection, and I don't give up what's mine." There was that word again. Mine. It should have felt possessive, should have felt like chains, but somehow in his rough voice it felt like safety. Grace tugged on Celeste's skirt. "The angels will protect us. They always do." "Grace, sweetheart, sometimes people need more than angels." Jeremiah knelt down. "Sometimes they need to be smart, and careful, and ready." "Ready for what?" "For trouble." He looked up at Celeste. "I need to tell you something. Something about your mother." Celeste's heart stopped. "What about her?" "When Sarah was alive, she used to go to town sometimes. Help women who needed it. Medicine mostly. Herbs and healing. Your mother came to her once." Jeremiah stood. "This was years ago, before you were probably even born. She was young, newly married to Elias, and he'd already started showing his true colors. I don't understand what—" "Your mother told Sarah about a deed, land her father had left her before he died. Hundreds of acres in this valley. But Elias had convinced her to sign it over to him, said it was the right thing for a wife to do. Said he'd manage it better." Jeremiah's jaw clenched. "But Sarah saw the bruises on your mother's arms, saw the fear in her eyes, so she did something." Celeste couldn't breathe. "What did she do?" "She helped your mother hide a copy of the original deed. The one that had your mother's name on it, not Elias's. Sarah knew how to read law papers. Her father had been a clerk, and she knew that original deed meant something. Meant your mother still had claim to that land. But my mother died 5 years ago. If she had land, why didn't she—" "Because Elias would have killed her for it. Sarah knew that. Your mother knew that. So they hid it, kept it secret. And Sarah made your mother promise that if anything happened, if she died, she'd make sure you knew. Make sure you knew you had something your father couldn't take." Celeste's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the floor. Grace immediately curled into her lap. "Where?" The word came out strangled. "Where is the deed?" "That's the thing. Sarah died before your mother could tell her where she hid it. But—" Jeremiah knelt in front of her. "Before Sarah died in the fever, she kept saying your mother's name. Kept saying, 'The deed, tell the daughter about the deed.' I didn't know what she meant. Didn't even know if it was real or just fever dreams. But I remembered. And when Grace started having dreams about a girl named Celeste Hartwell who needed saving." He stopped. "I put it together. So my mother left me land that's legally mine. If we can find the deed, if it's still valid, if—" Jeremiah's hand covered hers. "If a lot of things. But yes, you might own half this valley, including the land Dutch Carver's been trying to buy for years to expand his operations." Understanding crashed over her. "That's why he bid so high. That's why he's so angry. He thought if he owned me, he'd own my land." "Probably. Men like Carver think everything's for sale if the price is right." But how would he even know about your father? Jeremiah's voice was hard. Elias knew about the deed. Had to. He's been searching for it for years, tearing apart your mother's things probably. When he couldn't find it, he did the next best thing, sold you to someone who'd never let you claim it. Celeste looked down at Grace in her lap, at this child who'd dreamed of angels and salvation, at this man who'd saved her not just from the auction block, but from a trap she hadn't even known existed. So what do? We find the deed. We file it with the territory office. We make your claim legal and binding. Jeremiah squeezed her hand. And we keep you alive long enough to do it. Grace yawned against Celeste's shoulder. The angels know where it is. They told me in the dream. It's somewhere safe. Somewhere only Angel can find it. Grace, honey, dreams don't work like Mama's grave. Grace's voice was suddenly clear, certain. The angel said it's where Mama's buried, where someone who loved you put it for safekeeping. Celeste and Jeremiah stared at each other. Your mother and Sarah were friends, Jeremiah said slowly. If your mother was going to hide something somewhere, Elias would never look. She'd hide it with your wife, Celeste finished. A grave he'd never disturb. A place protected by someone else's grief. We need to go to the meadow. Now. Now. Jeremiah stood. Before Carver sends more than just the sheriff. Before your father figures out where you are. Before... He stopped. We need to go now. They bundled Grace in warm clothes. Jeremiah grabbed a shovel from the shed. Celeste's hands wouldn't stop shaking as she tied her boots Jeremiah had given her that morning, thick and warm and nothing like the thin slippers she'd worn on the auction block. The walk to the meadow took 20 minutes. The snow was deep in places, and Jeremiah had to carry Grace on his shoulders. But finally, they broke through the trees into a clearing. A single oak tree stood in the center, massive and ancient. Snow covered the ground, but Celeste could imagine flowers blooming here in spring. Could imagine why someone would choose this place for final rest. There. Jeremiah pointed to the base of the tree where the bark had been carved with careful letters. Sarah Elizabeth Blackwood. Beloved wife and mother. Celeste approached slowly, placed her hand on the carved name. I wish I'd known her, she whispered. She would have liked you. Jeremiah's voice was rough. Would have said you had strong hands and a good heart. That's all she ever looked for in people. Grace slipped off his shoulders and ran to the grave. She knelt in the snow, brushing it away from the base of the tree with her small hands. Here, she called. The angels said here. Jeremiah and Celeste joined her. Together, they cleared away the snow, revealing the earth beneath. Jeremiah started digging, careful, respectful, not disturbing the grave itself, but searching the area around the carved trunk. Wait, Celeste pointed. There, that stone. It's different from the others. Jeremiah cleared dirt away from a flat stone wedged against the tree roots. It was smooth, deliberate, not natural to this place. He pried it loose. Underneath, wrapped in oilcloth and buried in a small hollow, was a leather tube. Celeste's hands shook as she took it, unwrapped the oilcloth, opened the tube. Papers slid out. Old, yellowed, but intact. Land deed. The top page read, property of Margaret Ann Hartwell, granted by her father Thomas Winters, witnessed and sealed by the territorial court. Celeste's mother's name, her mother's signature at the bottom, and beneath it, hundreds of acres mapped out in careful detail, including the land where Dutch carvers' saloons now stood. This is it, she breathed. This is proof. This is leverage. Jeremiah stood, pulling them both to their feet. This is how we keep you safe. We get this to the territorial office. We file it. We make it legal before Carver knows we have it. But the territorial office is 3 days' ride. And if Carver's already watching, then we don't have much time. Jeremiah looked at Grace. Can you be brave, sweetheart? Can you stay with Mrs. Patterson in town while Daddy takes Angel somewhere important? Grace's lower lip trembled. You're leaving. Just for a few days, to keep Angel safe. He knelt down, cupping her face. Mrs. Patterson will spoil you rotten. You know she will. And when we come back, everything will be better. I promise. You never break promises, Grace whispered. Never. He kissed her forehead. Pack your things. We leave at dawn. That night, Celeste couldn't sleep. She stood by her window watching the moon rise over the pines. The deed was wrapped carefully on her dresser, proof that she mattered, that she had value beyond what men bid for her in town squares. A soft knock on the door. It's me, Jeremiah said quietly. Can I come in? Yes. He entered, closing the door behind him. In the moonlight, he looked exhausted, worried, human in a way he hadn't let himself be before. Can't sleep either, he asked. Too much has happened. My brain won't stop spinning. Mine neither. He sat on the edge of her bed, careful to keep distance between them. Keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong. That's encouraging. Despite everything, he almost smiled. Sorry. Occupational hazard. I'm a planner. I think through every possible outcome. And what outcome do you see for us? The question hung in the air. Us. Not her. Not him. Us. I see you safe, Jeremiah said finally. I see Grace growing up knowing you. I see... He stopped, started again. I see something good. Maybe not perfect. Maybe not easy. But good. Celeste moved to sit beside him. Their shoulders touched. Heat radiated through the thin fabric of her nightgown. Something else he'd given her, soft cotton that smelled like lavender. I've never had good before, she admitted. I don't know how to trust it. Neither do I. But maybe we can learn together. She turned to look at him. Really look. Saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way he held himself like he was always ready for the next blow. Are you scared? She asked. Terrified. He met her gaze. Scared of losing Grace. Scared of losing you. Scared of... He stopped. His hand found hers in the darkness. Scared of caring again. Of letting someone matter. Because everyone who matters eventually leaves. I'm not leaving. You say that now, but when things get hard, I'll stay. Celeste squeezed his hand. Because you stayed for me. Because Grace stayed for me. Because this... She gestured to the room, the cabin, the life he'd given her. This is the first time I've ever felt like I belonged somewhere. And I'm not giving that up without a fight. Jeremiah's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. What if the fight costs everything? Then we fight anyway. She leaned her head against his shoulder. Together. They sat like that for a long time. Two people who'd lost everything, learning to believe in something again. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines. Inside, something shifted. Something that felt like hope, fragile, but growing. I should let you sleep, Jeremiah finally said. But he didn't move. Stay. The word escaped before she could stop it. Just until I fall asleep. Please, I don't... Her voice cracked. I don't want to be alone right now. He nodded, helped her into bed, pulled the quilt up to her chin. Then he settled into the chair beside her window, keeping watch like he'd done every night since Sarah died. Jeremiah. Yeah. Thank you. For everything. For seeing me when everyone else looked away. You made it easy. His voice was soft. You shined even on that platform. Even when they tried to dim your light. I saw it the moment Grace pointed at you. Celeste's eyes drifted closed. The last thing she heard before sleep claimed her was Jeremiah's voice, barely a whisper. Sleep safe, Celeste. I've got you. And for the first time in years, she believed it. Dawn came with Grace bouncing on the bed. "Wake up, Angel. Daddy says we're going on an adventure. I packed my doll and my best rocks, and oh." She stopped seeing Jeremiah asleep in the chair. "Did Daddy stay all night?" "He did." Celeste sat up, her heart doing something strange at the sight of him, head tilted back, arms crossed, somehow still protective even in sleep. "He must really like you." Grace climbed into Celeste's lap. "He only stayed with Mama like that. When she was sick, he wouldn't leave her side." Celeste's throat tightened. "Grace, I'm not trying to replace your mother." "I know. The angel said you're different. You're yours, and that's okay." Grace hugged her. "I think Mama would like you. She always said the best people were the ones who'd been broken and put themselves back together. Said broken people knew how to be gentle with other people's cracks. Your Mama was smart." "The smartest." Grace yawned. "Daddy said she could outthink anyone. That's why he married her. Said her brain was more beautiful than her face, and her face was really, really beautiful." Jeremiah stirred. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused for a moment before sharpening. He sat up quickly, wincing at the stiffness in his neck. "Morning," Celeste said softly. "Morning." He stood rolling his shoulders. "We should get moving. Want to reach town before nightfall." They ate a quick breakfast, packed essentials into saddlebags. Jeremiah moved through the cabin with military efficiency, checking windows, securing doors, hiding anything valuable. "If anyone comes while we're gone," he said more to himself than to them, "they won't find anything worth taking." Except the cabin itself, the home he'd built with his own hands. But he didn't say that part out loud. The ride down the mountain was tense. Jeremiah kept one hand on the reins and one on the rifle across his saddle. His eyes scanned the tree line constantly. Grace sat in front of Celeste on the horse, chattering nervously about everything and nothing. They were an hour from town when Jeremiah suddenly pulled up short. "What's wrong?" Celeste asked. "Someone's been here." He pointed to tracks in the snow. "Fresh, maybe an hour old. 3 horses, moving fast. Toward town." "No." His face went hard. "Toward the cabin." Celeste's blood turned to ice. "But we just left." "I know." Jeremiah's hand tightened on the rifle. "They're watching the trails, waiting to see when we'd leave." He looked at Celeste, and something fierce burned in his eyes. "They wanted us separated from the cabin, wanted us vulnerable on the road. What do we do?" "We keep moving. Mrs. Patterson's is only 10 minutes ahead. We get Grace safe then." He stopped listening. Hoofbeats. Coming fast. "Hold on." Jeremiah kicked the horse into a gallop. The wagon lurched forward. Grace screamed. Celeste wrapped her arms around the little girl, holding on for dear life. The hoofbeats got closer. "Blackwood, stop." Celeste knew that voice. Dutch Carver. "Don't stop," she yelled. "Wasn't planning on it." Jeremiah leaned forward, urging the horse faster. But Dutch's horse was faster. He pulled alongside them, reaching for the reins. Jeremiah's fist caught him square in the jaw. Dutch fell back cursing, but 2 more riders appeared, his men rough-looking and armed. "Last chance, Blackwood, give us the girl, and nobody gets hurt." "Go to hell." Jeremiah swerved the wagon toward them. One rider veered off his horse screaming. The other kept coming. Then Grace started screaming. Not in fear, in pain. "My arm, Daddy! My arm!" In the chaos, she'd been thrown against the wagon side. Her left arm hung at a wrong angle. Everything stopped. Jeremiah pulled the wagon to a halt so fast they nearly overturned. He jumped down, gathering Grace into his arms. "Baby, let me see. Let Daddy see." Grace sobbed, cradling her arm. "It hurts. It hurts so much." Dutch and his men circled them. "Well, well." Dutch smiled, blood trickling from his split lip. "Looks like we can do this the easy way after all." He looked at Celeste. "Come with us and the kid gets to see a doctor. Make trouble and—" He shrugged. "Accidents happen." Jeremiah's eyes met Celeste's. She saw the calculation there, the terrible math of what he was willing to sacrifice. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't you dare give me up for— Grace needs a doctor." His voice was raw. "I can't let her. I won't." "The deed," Celeste said quietly. "I'll go with them. But the deed stays with you. You file it. You make sure they can't touch it." "Celeste, promise me." She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "Promise me you'll finish this. That you'll make sure my mother's sacrifice meant something. That you'll keep Grace safe." His jaw clenched. "I'm coming for you. Soon as Grace is safe, I'm coming." "I know." She kissed his forehead, then Grace's. "Be brave, little one. The angels are still watching." She climbed down from the wagon. Dutch's smile widened. "Smart girl. Now about that deed." "Don't have it." Celeste held up her empty hands. "Left it at the cabin, hidden. You'll never find it without me." It was a lie. The deed was in Jeremiah's saddlebag. But Dutch didn't need to know that. "Then I guess we'll have to persuade you to tell us where." Dutch nodded to his men. "Tie her up. We've got a long ride ahead." Celeste didn't resist as they bound her hands. Didn't look back as they lifted her onto a horse. Didn't let herself cry as they rode away from Jeremiah and Grace. But she held on to one thing. His promise. He was coming for her. And until then, she'd survive. Whatever it took. The ride to Dutch's place took 3 hours, and every minute of it, Celeste spent calculating her chances of survival. They weren't good. Dutch rode ahead, occasionally glancing back at her like she was livestock he'd just purchased. His 2 men flanked her, one young and nervous, the other older with dead eyes that had seen too much and felt too little. "Where are we going?" Celeste finally asked. "My ranch," Dutch said without turning around. "Got some questions that need answering. Best done in private." Private? The word sent ice through her veins. They passed through Riverside as the sun began to set. People on the street stopped to stare. A woman buying vegetables from a cart looked away quickly when Celeste's eyes met hers. The blacksmith kept hammering like he saw nothing. Even the preacher standing outside his church turned his back. Nobody would help her. Nobody dared cross Dutch Carver. The ranch sat 2 miles outside town, sprawling, expensive, built on money earned from other people's misery. Dutch dismounted and gestured for his men to bring her inside. They dragged her into a study lined with books Dutch had probably never read. Pushed her into a chair. The younger one looked uncomfortable. The older one looked bored. "Leave us," Dutch said. "Boss, you sure that's—" "I said leave." They left. Dutch poured himself a whiskey. Didn't offer her any. He stood by the window watching the last of the daylight fade. "You cost me a lot of money," he finally said. $1,800, plus the land I was planning to acquire through your father, plus the humiliation of losing a bid to a mountain hermit. He turned to face her. "You understand why I'm upset. You're upset because you think you can own people." Celeste kept her voice steady. "You're upset because for once, someone told you no." His hand cracked across her face so fast she didn't see it coming. Pain exploded through her cheek. Her head snapped to the side. Blood filled her mouth. "You don't speak to me like that," Dutch said calmly. "You don't speak to me at all unless I ask you a question. Understand?" Celeste spat blood onto his expensive carpet. "No." He hit her again. This time she was ready for it. She rode the blow, let her body absorb it, didn't make a sound. "Where's the deed?" "I told you. Hidden at the cabin." "Liar." He grabbed her hair, yanking her head back. "Blackwood wouldn't leave you unprotected. He'd give you leverage." "So where is it?" "The cabin." She met his eyes. "Somewhere you'll never find it. Somewhere only I know." Dutch studied her face. looking for cracks, for weakness, for the moment she'd break. He wouldn't find it. Celeste had been breaking and remaking herself for 23 years. She knew how to hold on when everything else crumbled. Fine. Dutch released her. We'll do this another way. He walked to the door. Wilson. Get in here. The older man entered. Take her to the cellar. No food, no water, no light. Dutch smiled. Let's see how brave she is after a few days alone in the dark. Wilson grabbed her arm. Celeste didn't resist as he dragged her through the house down narrow stairs into a cellar that smelled of mold and rot and fear. He shoved her inside. The door slammed. A lock clicked. Darkness swallowed her whole. Celeste stood frozen for a long moment, letting her eyes adjust. But there was nothing to adjust to. The darkness was complete. Absolute. She couldn't see her hand in front of her face. She felt along the walls. Stone. Damp. Cold, seeping through the cracks. No windows. No light. Just her and the darkness and the sound of her own breathing. She sank to the floor. Pulled her knees to her chest. Started counting her heartbeats to keep track of time. 1, 2, 3. Jeremiah was taking Grace to safety. 4, 5, 6. He'd file the deed. Make it legal. 7, 8, 9. He'd come for her. He promised. 10, 11, 12. But what if he didn't? What if Grace's injury was worse than they thought? What if he decided one woman wasn't worth the risk? No. She shut down that thought immediately. Jeremiah Blackwood kept his promises. Grace had said so. And Grace's angels had never been wrong yet. Time became meaningless in the dark. Celeste counted heartbeats until the numbers stopped making sense. She recited every poem her mother had taught her. She sang songs under her breath. She did anything to keep her mind from spiraling into the fear that waited at the edges of her consciousness. The cold got worse. Or maybe she just noticed it more as time passed. Her thin dress was meant for autumn, not for stone cellars in late fall. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried to remember warmth. The fire in Jeremiah's cabin. Grace's small body pressed against hers. The weight of the quilt he'd given her. She must have dozed because she woke to the sound of the door opening. Light flooded in dim lamplight that felt like the sun after so much darkness. Celeste squinted, shielding her eyes. Still alive. Dutch stood in the doorway. Good. I'd hate for this to end too quickly. How long has it been? 2 days. He smiled at her sharp intake of breath. Feels longer, doesn't it? The dark has a way of stretching time. 2 days. Jeremiah would have reached town by now, would have gotten Grace to a doctor. Would have, your mountain man came looking for you, Dutch said, reading her thoughts. Showed up at my gate yesterday morning, demanding I release you. Celeste's heart leaped. What did you? Told him I had no idea what he was talking about. Told him you'd run off after he brought you to town. Told him maybe you'd decided mountain life wasn't for you after all. Dutch crouched down to her level. He didn't believe me, of course. But without proof, without witnesses, there's nothing he can do. The law's on my side. Always has been. The deed? Ah, yes, the deed. Dutch's smile widened. See, I thought about that. Thought about why you'd lie about where it was. And I realized Blackwood has it, doesn't he? He's probably already filed it with the territorial office. Celeste kept her face carefully blank. That's okay, Dutch continued. Because here's the thing about legal documents. They require a living claimant. And if something unfortunate were to happen to you, say you were found dead from exposure after running away from your rescuer, well, the deed would be worthless. Unclaimed land reverts to territorial holdings, which I can then purchase through proper channels. You'd kill me for land. I'd kill you for less. He stood. But I'm not an unreasonable man. Tell me where Blackwood hid the deed, the real location, not your lies, and I'll let you walk out of here. Give you enough money to start fresh somewhere far away. You'll never see Riverside again, never see Blackwood again, but you'll be alive. No. Think about it. What loyalty do you owe him? You've known him for what, a week, and already he's abandoned you, left you here to die while he plays father to his daughter. He didn't abandon me. I chose to go with you, to keep Grace safe. How noble. Dutch's voice dripped sarcasm. And where did that nobility get you, locked in my cellar, starving and freezing while he's warm in his cabin? You think he's coming back for you? You think you matter that much to him? Yes. Celeste's voice was stronger than she felt. I do. Dutch studied her for a long moment, then he shrugged. Your funeral. He turned to leave. Wait, Celeste called. Water, please, just water. He paused at the door. Tell me about the deed, and I'll bring you a feast. I can't tell you what I don't know. Then I guess you'll die thirsty. The door slammed. The lock clicked. Darkness again. Celeste let herself cry then. Not from fear, not from pain, but from the crushing weight of hope deferred. Jeremiah was looking for her. He'd come to Dutch's gate. But Dutch had sent him away, and now he was somewhere out there thinking she'd run, thinking she'd left. No, he wouldn't think that. He knew her better. He'd seen her fight. He'd know she wouldn't just abandon Grace. She had to believe that. Had to hold on to it like a rope in a storm. Time passed. Hours or days she couldn't tell anymore. The thirst became unbearable. Her lips cracked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. She licked the moisture from the stone walls, desperate for anything wet. The door opened again. This time, it wasn't Dutch. It was the younger man, the one who'd looked uncomfortable when they brought her in. Here. He thrust a cup at her. Water sloshed over the sides. Celeste grabbed it, drinking so fast she choked. The water was warm and stale, and the most beautiful thing she'd ever tasted. Why? She managed when the cup was empty. Because this ain't right. He wouldn't meet her eyes. I signed on to work cattle, not torture women. Dutch can fire me if he wants, but I ain't letting you die down here. What's your name? Tommy. He finally looked at her. He was young, maybe 19, with the kind of face that hadn't quite hardened into cruelty yet. You really own land Dutch wants? My mother did. Left it to me when she died. And Dutch is keeping you here to steal it. That's about the size of it. Tommy cursed under his breath. My ma would tan my hide if she knew I was part of this. He reached into his pocket. Here. It ain't much, but... He pulled out a piece of bread, hard, probably a few days old, but Celeste took it like it was gold. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet. I can't get you out. Dutch has Wilson watching the cellar at night, and during the day there's too many men around. But I can keep you alive until... He stopped. Until whatever's gonna happen happens. There's a man, Celeste said quickly. Jeremiah Blackwood, tall, dark hair beard. He'll come back. When he does, you need to tell him I'm here. Can you do that? If he comes back, Dutch will just turn him away again. Then you find a way to get a message to him. Tell him... She thought quickly. Tell him Grace's angel is waiting. He'll understand. Tommy nodded. I'll try. That's all I can promise. That's enough. He left, locking the door behind him, but leaving her with water and bread and something more precious than either hope. Celeste ate the bread slowly, making it last. The water she rationed, taking small sips to wet her throat. She counted heartbeats again, recited poems, sang songs, and she waited. She must have slept because she woke to shouting above her. Men's voices angry and overlapping. Then gunshots. 3 of them sharp cracks that echoed through the house. The cellar door flew open. Wilson stood there, his gun drawn. Get up. What's happening? Your mountain man happened. Wilson grabbed her arm, hauling her to her feet. He and half the men from Riverside just stormed the front gate. Dutch wants you moved before they breach the house. Jeremiah. He'd come. He'd actually come. Wilson dragged her up the stairs. The house was chaos men running loading guns, barricading doors. Through a window, Celeste caught a glimpse of figures in the yard. One of them was impossibly tall, moving with lethal purpose. Where are you taking me? Celeste tried to pull free. Shut up. Wilson shoved her toward the back of the house. There's a barn out back. Dutch has horses ready. We're getting you out of here before... The front door exploded inward. Jeremiah Blackwood stood in the wreckage, a rifle in his hands and murder in his eyes. Behind him, Celeste saw faces she recognized from Riverside, the blacksmith, the general store owner, even the preacher. Men who'd turned away when Dutch's men dragged her through town. Men who'd found their courage somewhere between then and now. Where is she? Jeremiah's voice could have shattered stone. Now, Blackwood, let's be reasonable. Dutch appeared from a side room, his hands raised. This is trespassing. These men are witnesses. I'll have you arrested for... You kidnapped her. Jeremiah didn't lower the rifle. You locked her in your cellar and left her to die. That sound reasonable to you? I did no such thing. The girl ran off. I have no idea what you're... Liar. Tommy pushed forward from the back of the crowd. His face was pale but determined. I saw her. Been bringing her water for 3 days. She's in the cellar just like he says. Dutch's face went purple. You little... Check the cellar, the preacher said firmly. If she's not there, we leave. If she is Dutch Carver, you'll answer for it. 3 men broke off toward the cellar door. Wilson, still holding Celeste, looked between his boss and the mob. Calculation flickered across his face. Don't, Celeste said quietly. It's over. Let me go. For a moment she thought he might. His grip loosened slightly. But then Dutch pulled a gun from his belt, and everything happened at once. Wilson shoved Celeste behind him. Dutch fired. The bullet caught Wilson in the shoulder, spinning him around. Celeste fell, hitting the floor hard. Jeremiah's rifle barked. Dutch's gun clattered to the floor as he clutched his hand, howling. Then Jeremiah was there, pulling Celeste to her feet, checking her for injuries, with hands that shook. Are you hurt? Did he... I'm okay. She threw her arms around his neck. You came. You actually came. Of course I came. His voice was rough against her hair. You think I'd leave you here? You think anything could stop me from... Grace. Celeste pulled back. Is she... Her arm was broken but clean. The doctor said it. Mrs. Patterson's watching her. His hands cupped her face. I got the deed filed. Made it legal. You own that land, Celeste. It's yours. Dutch can't touch it. Then it's over. It's over. Dutch snarled from where he knelt, clutching his bleeding hand. This isn't over. I have lawyers. I have friends in the territorial government. I'll fight this deed. I'll prove fraud. You'll do nothing. The sheriff pushed through the crowd. Not Morrison, but a different man, older and harder. I'm Sheriff Coleman from the territorial office. We've been investigating Dutch Carver for months. Land fraud, extortion, human trafficking. This... He gestured at Celeste. Just added kidnapping to the list. You have no proof of... We have your books. Coleman smiled grimly. The ones you thought were hidden. The ones that show every illegal deal, every bribe, every woman you've bought and sold over the last decade. He nodded to his deputies. Take him. Dutch fought as they dragged him away, still shouting threats. But his voice faded into nothing as they hauled him outside. Celeste sagged against Jeremiah. I can't believe it's really over. Believe it. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're safe. You're free. And you're coming home. Home, she repeated. The word felt foreign and familiar all at once. The crowd dispersed slowly. Tommy approached, his hat in his hands. Ma'am, I'm sorry for not doing more sooner, for being part of... You kept me alive. Celeste interrupted. You gave me water and hope when I had nothing. That's more than most people would do. If you need work, Jeremiah said, I could use help at the cabin. Winter's coming and there's wood to chop, repairs to make. Pays not much, but it's honest. Tommy's face lit up. You mean it? I don't say things I don't mean. Then yes, sir, I'd be honored. They left Dutch's ranch as the sun began to set. Jeremiah insisted on carrying Celeste to his horse, refusing to let her walk despite her protests that she was fine. You've been locked in a cellar for 3 days, he said firmly. You're not fine. You're exhausted and dehydrated and probably haven't eaten a real meal since... His voice caught. Since I let them take you. You didn't let them. I chose to go. To keep Grace safe. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to make that choice again. He settled her in front of him on the saddle, his arms bracketing her body. Hold on. The ride back to town was quiet. Celeste leaned back against Jeremiah's chest, feeling his heartbeat through his shirt. Steady, strong, real. What happened? She finally asked. How did you get all those men to help? Mrs. Patterson happened. Jeremiah's voice carried a hint of amusement. The moment I told her what Dutch had done, she marched through Riverside like an avenging angel. Shamed every man in town for standing by while women were hurt. By the time she was done, half of Riverside was ready to storm Dutch's gates. Remind me to thank her. She'll want more than thanks. She'll want the full story. Probably want to throw you a party. Mrs. Patterson loves a good redemption story. Is that what this is? Redemption? I don't know what else to call it. His arms tightened around her. You went from an auction block to a landowner in less than a week. Stood up to Dutch Carver. Survived his cellar. That sounds like redemption to me. I didn't survive alone. You came for me. You knew I would. I hoped. There's a difference. Not anymore. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. From now on, hope and certainty are the same thing. Because I will always come for you. Always. They reached Mrs. Patterson's house just as night fell completely. The door flew open before they could dismount, and Grace came running out, her left arm wrapped in a white cast. Angel, Angel, you're back! She threw her good arm around Celeste's legs. I prayed and prayed, and the angels said you'd be safe, and you are, and Daddy's not crying anymore, and... Grace, let her breathe. Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway, a round woman with kind eyes and flour on her apron. Come inside, all of you. I've got stew on and beds made up. You all look half dead. Celeste had never been more grateful for anything than that warm house, that hot stew, that soft bed. She ate slowly, every bite, feeling like a miracle. Grace sat pressed against her side, chattering about everything that had happened while Celeste was gone. Mrs. Patterson taught me how to make biscuits with one hand. And the doctor said my arm will heal good as new. And Daddy barely slept at all because he was planning how to get you back. He drew maps and everything. Want to see? Let the woman rest, child. Mrs. Patterson refilled Celeste's bowl. She's been through more than any person should. But Celeste didn't want rest. She wanted this Grace's warmth. Mrs. Patterson's kindness, Jeremiah's presence across the table. She wanted normal domestic safe. After dinner, Mrs. Patterson shooed Jeremiah away to give Celeste privacy to wash and change. The hot water felt like heaven on her skin. The clean dress borrowed from Mrs. Patterson and too short but soft felt like luxury. When she emerged, she found Jeremiah sitting by the fire staring into the flames. Can't sleep either, she asked. He looked up. Something flickered in his eyes when he saw her, something warm and hungry, and quickly shuddered. Figured I'd keep watch. Make sure no one else tries anything. Dutch is in jail. Wilson's wounded. It's over. I know, but my brain doesn't believe it yet. He patted the chair beside him. Sit, if you want. She sat. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled. Somewhere upstairs, Grace sang softly to herself, a lullaby her mother used to sing probably. "I'm sorry," Jeremiah finally said. "For what?" "For letting you go with them. For not fighting harder. For—" "Stop." Celeste took his hand. "You made the right choice. Grace needed a doctor. I needed you to file that deed. If you'd fought Dutch, then with his men surrounding us, someone would have died. Probably you. Maybe that would have been better than leaving you in that cellar." "Don't say that." She squeezed his hand hard. "Don't you dare. Grace needs you. I need you. You don't get to decide your life is worth less than mine. But yours is worth exactly as much as yours, no more, no less." She turned to face him fully. "We're in this together, remember?" That was the deal. No martyrs, no heroes. Just two broken people figuring it out as we go. He looked at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he raised her hand to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Together," he agreed. "Together." They sat by the fire until the flames burned low. Mrs. Patterson found them there hours later, both asleep in their chairs, hands still clasped between them. She smiled and draped blankets over their shoulders. Young love, she thought. Or maybe not so young. Maybe just love that had been waiting a long time to be born. Either way, it was beautiful to see. Morning brought clarity and plans. Jeremiah met with Sheriff Coleman to give statements. The territorial office confirmed Celeste's deed was legal and binding. Dutch Carver would stand trial for a dozen crimes and his assets would be seized. Including, Sheriff Coleman said, "the buildings he constructed on your land, Miss Hartwell. They're technically yours now. You could tear them down or sell them," Celeste said immediately. "Use the money to help the women Dutch hurt. The ones he bought and sold. They deserve compensation." Coleman's eyebrows rose. "That's remarkably generous. It's the right thing to do." By afternoon, papers were signed. Celeste Hartwell was officially a landowner. Tommy signed on as Jeremiah's hired hand. Grace's arm was healing well. Everything should have felt perfect. But as they prepared to leave Riverside, Celeste felt a shadow of unease. Something wasn't finished. Something still waited. "What is it?" Jeremiah asked, loading supplies into the wagon. "My father," Celeste said quietly. "Elias. He started all this. Sold me to pay his debts. Where is he?" Jeremiah's face went hard. "In the wind. Heard he left town the day after the auction. Probably figured Dutch would come after him when things went south. So he just gets away with it. For now." Jeremiah's hand found her shoulder. "But men like that, they don't stay lucky forever. He'll surface somewhere, and when he does, the law will be waiting." "Will it?" Celeste turned to him. "The law didn't help my mother. Didn't help me. Dutch operated for years with the law in his pocket. What makes you think my father will face justice?" "Because you're not alone anymore." Jeremiah cupped her face. "You have me. You have Grace. You have land and money and legal standing. You're not a powerless girl locked in a cellar anymore. You're Celeste Hartwell, landowner. And if your father shows his face again, he'll answer for what he did." She wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that the world worked that way. But 23 years of experience told her different. They left Riverside at sunset, Grace between them in the wagon, Tommy riding alongside on his own horse. The town faded behind them, and with it the platform where Celeste had stood just days ago, trembling and alone. She wasn't that woman anymore. She didn't know who she was instead, but that was okay. She'd figure it out. The ride up the mountain felt different this time. Celeste wasn't running, wasn't being rescued. She was going home. Home. The word still felt strange, but less so every time she thought it. They reached the cabin after dark. Jeremiah lit lamps while Grace showed Tommy where to put his things in the small room Jeremiah had built for storage. Celeste stood in the main room taking it all in. Nothing had changed, but everything felt different. "You okay?" Jeremiah appeared at her elbow. Yeah, just processing. Take your time. Processing is good. He handed her a cup of tea. Tomorrow we'll figure out the details. The land, the money, what you want to do with it all. But tonight, we just breathe. Breathing sounds good. Grace appeared, yawning hugely. Angel, will you tuck me in? Please. Of course, sweetheart. Celeste followed Grace to her room. The little girl climbed into bed, clutching her rag doll with her good arm. I'm glad you're back, Grace said sleepily. The cabin was too quiet without you. I'm glad I'm back too. The angels said you'd be okay, but I was still scared. Being scared is okay. It means you care. Do you think... Grace hesitated. Do you think you'll stay forever now? Or will you leave again? Celeste's throat tightened. I'm not leaving, Grace. Not unless you and your daddy decide you don't want me here anymore. We'll never decide that. Grace's eyes were already closing. You're family now. The angels said so. Celeste kissed her forehead. Sleep tight, little one. You too, Angel Mama. The words hit Celeste like a physical blow. Angel Mama. Not Angel. Not Celeste. Mama. She stumbled out of Grace's room, hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Jeremiah caught her in the hallway. What's wrong? What happened? She called me Mama. Celeste sobbed. She called me Mama, and I don't know if if I'm good enough to... Hey, look at me. Jeremiah guided her to sit on the edge of his bed. You don't have to be anything you're not ready for. Grace is 4. She doesn't fully understand. But what if I fail her? What if I can't be what she needs? Then we'll figure it out together. He wiped her tears with his thumbs. You think I knew how to be a father when Sarah died? I barely knew how to hold a baby without breaking her. But Grace and I learned together. And if you want to learn with us, if you want to try being... He stopped, swallowed hard. If you want to try being her mother, we'll learn that together too. And if I'm terrible at it, then you'll be terrible at it with 2 people who love you anyway. Love. He'd said love. Celeste looked up at him and something passed between them. Something that had been building since the moment he'd stepped onto that platform, since he'd carried her to his wagon, since he'd built her a room and kept watch while she slept. Jeremiah. He kissed her, soft at first, tentative, asking permission with every movement. Celeste answered by wrapping her arms around his neck and pulling him closer. The kiss deepened. Weeks of fear and hope and almost loss poured into it. His hands tangled in her hair. Her fingers traced the muscles of his back. They broke apart, gasping. I'm sorry, Jeremiah said immediately. I shouldn't have... Don't apologize. Celeste rested her forehead against his. Don't you dare apologize for that. I don't want to rush you. Don't want to make you feel like you owe me. I don't feel that way. She pulled back to look him in the eye. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly who I'm supposed to be with. And if that's too fast or too much, it's not. He kissed her again, slower this time. It's not too much. It's right, she finished. Yeah, right. They sat there for a long time, holding each other, letting the reality of survival sink in. They'd made it. Against all odds, through all dangers, they'd made it to the other side. Outside the pines whispered their secrets to the wind. Inside, 3 broken people became a family. And somewhere in the darkness, watching from afar, Elias Hartwell made plans. His daughter thought she'd won. She had no idea the storm that was coming. 2 weeks passed in something that almost felt like peace. Celeste woke each morning to Grace's laughter and Jeremiah's quiet presence. She learned the rhythms of the cabin, how to bank the fire at night, so it lasted until dawn, which herbs to use, for which ailments, where the best kindling grew along the creek. Tommy proved himself worth twice his wages, chopping enough wood to last the winter and repairing the barn roof before the first heavy snow. But peace was fragile, and Celeste knew it. She felt it in the way Jeremiah checked the windows before bed. in how Tommy always positioned himself between her and the trail when they worked outside, in the silence that fell when hoofbeats echoed up the mountain, even when it was just a neighbor passing by. They were waiting, all of them, for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on a Tuesday morning. Celeste was kneading bread while Grace practiced her letters at the table. Jeremiah had taken Tommy to check the trap lines. The cabin was warm, safe, normal. Then Grace looked up from her slate. "Someone's coming." "How do you know?" "The pines told me." Grace tilted her head, listening to something Celeste couldn't hear. "They're upset. They don't like the person walking through them." Celeste's hands stilled in the dough. "Grace, I need you to do something for me. Can you be very brave?" "Yes." "Go to your room. Get under the bed. Don't come out until I say so, no matter what you hear. Understand?" Grace's eyes widened, but she nodded. She'd lived through enough danger to know when to obey without questions. She grabbed her doll and ran. Celeste wiped her hands on her apron. Her heart hammered, but her hands were steady as she reached for the rifle Jeremiah kept by the door. She didn't know much about shooting, but she knew which end to point. A knock on the door. Polite, almost friendly. "Celeste, baby girl, I know you're in there." Her father's voice, slurred with drink but unmistakable. Celeste's finger found the trigger. "Go away, Papa. You're not welcome here." "That's no way to greet your old man. I come all this way to see you, and you won't even open the door. You sold me. You put me on an auction block. You don't get to call yourself my father anymore." A pause. Then, "You're right. I was wrong. I was desperate and stupid and wrong. But I'm sober now, baby girl. Been sober for 2 weeks. And I've been thinking about what I did and—" His voice cracked. "I need to make it right. Please, just let me see you. Let me apologize proper." Celeste wanted to believe him. God, some part of her still wanted to believe that her father could change, could be the man her mother had fallen in love with, instead of the monster he'd become. But she'd learned that wanting something didn't make it true. "You can apologize from out there, then you can leave." "Celeste, please. I'm your father. Your blood. Doesn't that count for something?" "It used to, before you counted it in gold coins." She heard him sigh, heard footsteps moving away from the door. Relief flooded through her. Then glass shattered. Elias came through the window in a spray of broken glass and winter cold. He hit the floor rolling, came up with a knife in his hand. "I tried asking nice," he snarled. His eyes were wild, not sober, not even close. "But you always were stubborn like your mother." Celeste raised the rifle. "Get out." "Can't do that. See, I got debts, real bad debts. And Dutch Carver might be in jail, but his brothers ain't. They want their money. And the only way I can pay is—" He gestured at her with the knife. "Well, you're worth more alive than dead, but barely. If you take one step toward me, I'll shoot." "No, you won't. You're too soft, always were. Your mother ruined you with all that talk about kindness and love and—" Celeste pulled the trigger. The shot went wide, tearing through the wall beside Elias's head. He dove to the side, cursing. "You crazy—" She chambered another round. Her hands shook so hard she could barely hold the rifle, but she aimed at center mass this time. "Next one won't miss. Get out." Elias stared at her, really looked at her. And something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe. Or respect. Or just the realization that his little girl wasn't so little anymore. "You've changed," he said quietly. "You made sure of that. Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become, living in sin with a man playing house with his—" "My mother would be proud I survived you." Celeste's voice was steel. "She'd be proud I found people who actually love me, who choose me every day instead of spending me like I'm currency." "Love." Elias spat the word. "That mountain man doesn't love you. He bought you, just like Dutch tried to. You're still property, baby girl, just wearing a prettier collar." The words hit like a fist. Not because they were true, but because some dark part of Celeste had wondered the same thing in the quiet hours before dawn. Wondered if Jeremiah's kindness was just another form of ownership. But then she remembered his hands shaking as he'd pulled her from Dutch's ranch. Remembered him building a room before he'd even met her. Remembered Grace calling her mama, and Jeremiah kissing her like she was something precious. That wasn't ownership. That was love. "You're wrong," she said firmly, "and I'm done listening to you." Elias shifted his weight. The knife glinted in his hand. He was calculating odds, measuring distances. Celeste could see it in his eyes the moment he decided to rush her. She pulled the trigger. This time, she didn't miss. The bullet caught him in the leg. He went down screaming, clutching his thigh, as blood poured between his fingers. "You shot me. You shot your own father. You came at me with a knife." Celeste kept the rifle trained on him. "Grace, stay in your room." "I'm bleeding out. I need a doctor." "You need to leave. Crawl if you have to. But if you're still here when Jeremiah gets back, he'll do worse than shoot your leg." Elias stared at her with eyes full of hate and pain and something that might have been pride. "When did you get so hard?" "The day you stopped being my father." He dragged himself toward the broken window. Left a trail of blood across the clean floor Celeste had swept that morning. She watched him go rifle steady until he'd disappeared into the trees. Only then did she lower the gun. Only then did her hands start shaking so badly she dropped it. "Grace," she called, her voice breaking. "It's okay. He's gone." Grace emerged from her room, her face pale. "You shot him." "I had to." "I know." Grace ran forward, throwing her good arm around Celeste's waist. "You protected us, like Mama would have." Celeste sank to the floor, pulling Grace into her lap. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. "I shot my father. You shot a bad man who was trying to hurt you," Grace corrected firmly. "That's different." Was it Celeste didn't know anymore? Everything felt blurred, right and wrong, love and hate, family and enemy. Hoofbeats outside. Celeste grabbed for the rifle again, but then Jeremiah's voice. "Celeste, we saw Elias on the trail bleeding. What happened?" She tried to stand, couldn't. Her legs wouldn't hold her. Jeremiah burst through the door, took in the broken window, the blood on the floor, Celeste shaking on the ground with Grace in her arms. His face went white. "Are you hurt?" "Did he?" "I'm okay. I shot him. In the leg. He came through the window and I—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Jeremiah dropped to his knees beside them. His hands ran over her, checking for injuries. "You're sure you're okay?" "He didn't touch you." "He tried. I pulled the trigger before he could." Something fierce and proud flashed in Jeremiah's eyes. "Good." He pulled them both into his arms. "That's my girl. That's my brave, strong girl." "I shot my father," Celeste whispered against his chest. "You defended yourself. There's a difference." Grace had said the same thing. Maybe they were right. Maybe self-defense and violence weren't the same thing even when they looked identical from the outside. Tommy appeared in the doorway. "Boss Elias made it to the trail, but he's leaving a blood trail a blind man could follow. Want me to—" "Let him go," Jeremiah said. "He won't make it far with that wound. He'll either turn himself in for medical help or he'll bleed out in the woods. Either way, he's done threatening this family." Family. He'd said, family. Celeste lifted her head. "What if he comes back?" "He won't." Jeremiah's voice was absolute. "He saw what you're capable of now. Saw that you're not the scared girl he sold. That'll haunt him more than the bullet." Over the next hour, Tommy boarded up the broken window while Jeremiah cleaned the blood from the floor. Celeste sat with Grace, trying to stop shaking. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow looked like her father returning. "You need to rest," Jeremiah said after the cabin was secure. "You're in shock." "I'm fine." "You're shaking so hard you can't hold a cup." That's not fine. He lifted her easy as breathing and carried her to her room. Rest. I'll keep watch. But Grace is with Tommy helping him fix the window frame. She's safe. You're safe. Rest. He started to leave, but Celeste grabbed his hand. Stay, please. I don't want to be alone. Jeremiah hesitated. Then he settled into the chair beside her bed. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Celeste closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, she kept seeing her father's face. The hate in his eyes, the knife in his hand, the blood spreading across the floor. I keep thinking about my mother, she said quietly, about what she would think, if she'd hate me for shooting him. Your mother would understand. Jeremiah's hand found hers. She knew what kind of man he was. That's why she hid the deed. Why she protected you the only way she could. But he's still my father. Some part of me still... Her voice broke. Some part of me still remembers when he was good, when he'd read me stories and call me his little star and promised to keep me safe. That man died a long time ago. What came here today was just a ghost wearing his face. How do you do it? Celeste opened her eyes to look at him. How do you keep going after losing someone you loved? How do you not... She stopped. Started again. How do you not hate the world for taking her? Jeremiah was quiet for a long moment. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, soothing, steady reel. I did hate the world, he finally said. For a long time after Sarah died, I hated everything. Hated God for taking her. Hated myself for not being able to save her. Hated the walls of this cabin because everywhere I looked, I saw her. Heard her. Felt her absence like a physical wound. What changed? Grace. He smiled softly. Grace would wake up every morning and smile at me like the world was still beautiful, like there was still good to be found, and I realized I had a choice. I could stay in my hate and let it eat me alive, or I could choose to see what Grace saw, choose to believe that good things could still happen. And then Grace dreamed about me. And then Grace dreamed about you. His eyes met hers. And I had to choose again. Stay safe in my cabin with my grief, or risk hoping for something more. Risk believing that maybe, just maybe, broken things could be made whole again. Are we whole? Celeste asked. Or just less broken? I don't know. Maybe there's no difference. He leaned forward, pressing a kiss to her forehead. All I know is that you're here. Grace is happy. And for the first time in 3 years, I wake up looking forward to the day instead of dreading it. That feels pretty whole to me. Celeste pulled him closer, let his solid warmth chase away the chill that had settled in her bones. I was so scared, she whispered. When he came through that window, I was terrified. Not just of dying, but of failing Grace. Of you coming home and finding... Stop. Jeremiah cupped her face. You didn't fail anyone. You protected Grace. You protected yourself. You did exactly what you needed to do. But what if next time? There won't be a next time. Elias is done. And if anyone else comes... His voice dropped to something dangerous. They'll have to go through me first. And I promise you, Celeste, I'm a lot harder to get through than a window. She believed him. Believed in the steel beneath his gentleness, the violence he'd keep carefully leashed, except when protecting what was his, what was theirs. I love you, she said. The words escaped before she could stop them. I know it's too soon and we barely know each other and this is probably just trauma talking, but He kissed her, deep, claiming, promising. I love you too, he said against her lips. Loved you since I saw you on that platform. Loved you when you made bread with Grace. Loved you when you walked into Dutch's hands to keep my daughter safe. He pulled back to look at her. And I'll love you tomorrow, when you wake up, regretting saying this today. And I'll love you next week, when you're not sure anymore. And I'll love you next year, when you finally figured out whether you really meant it. I mean it now. I know. But feelings are complicated after trauma. So I'm giving you permission to take it back. To change your mind. I won't. Celeste's voice was firm. I won't change my mind. Because this isn't trauma. This is clarity. This is me finally understanding what love actually looks like. And what does it look like? Like a man who built a room for a stranger. Like a little girl who dreamed of angels. Like a family that chose each other instead of just being stuck together. She traced his jaw with her fingers. It looks like this. Like us. Jeremiah kissed her again. Softer this time. Gentler. Like they had all the time in the world instead of just these stolen moments between disasters. Marry me, he said when they broke apart. Celeste's heart stopped. What? Marry me. Not now, not until you're ready, not until you're sure. But someday when all this is settled and the danger's past, marry me. Make this real. Make us a family in the eyes of God and the law and everyone else. Jeremiah. I know it's fast. I know you probably think I'm crazy. But I'm 35 years old, and I've loved once before, and I know what it feels like. His hands shook as they cupped her face. This is it. You're it. And I don't want to waste time pretending otherwise. Celeste's eyes filled with tears. Yes. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. Someday. When we're ready. When Grace is ready. When... She laughed through her tears. When I've had time to process that I shot my father this morning and got proposed to this afternoon. Jeremiah laughed too, a rusty, unused sound that made her heart soar. Fair enough. A knock on the door. Tommy's voice apologetic. Boss, sorry to interrupt, but we've got a situation. Jeremiah was on his feet immediately. What kind of situation? Sheriff Coleman just rode up, says he needs to talk to Miss Celeste, something about Elias. Celeste's stomach dropped. He's pressing charges, for shooting him. Let's find out. Jeremiah helped her to her feet. Whatever it is, we face it together. They found Sheriff Coleman in the main room, hat in his hands. Grace sat at the table with Tommy, both pretending not to eavesdrop. Miss Hartwell. Coleman nodded to her. I understand there was an incident this morning. My father broke into this cabin. He came at me with a knife. I defended myself. So Elias claims. He also claims you lured him here to kill him, that you wanted revenge for the auction. That's a lie. Jeremiah stepped forward. Elias came here. Coleman held up a hand. I'm not here to arrest anyone. I'm here because Elias Hartwell turned himself in at the doctor's office. And before the doctor would treat him, Elias made a full confession. Celeste's breath caught. Confession. About selling you to cover gambling debts. About conspiring with Dutch Carver to steal your land. About multiple fraud charges going back years. Coleman's mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. Apparently, blood loss makes a man talkative. He sang like a bird, gave us names, dates, everything we need to close cases we've been working on for months. So I'm not in trouble. For defending yourself in your own home. No, ma'am. What happened here was clear self-defense. No charges will be filed. Coleman put his hat back on. Elias, on the other hand, is looking at 10 years minimum. More if the territorial judge is feeling uncharitable. Celeste's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the nearest chair. It's really over. He's really going to prison. Yes, ma'am. Dutch Carver's brothers, too. Turns out Elias's confession connected a lot of dots we'd been missing. Coleman moved toward the door. You're free, Miss Hartwell. Truly free. No one's coming for you anymore. After he left, silence filled the cabin. Grace was the first to break it, running to Celeste and throwing her arms around her. See? The angels promised everything would be okay. The angels were right. Celeste pulled her close. Over Grace's head she met Jeremiah's eyes. He was smiling. Really smiling, not the careful half-expressions he usually allowed himself. "It's over," he said, wonder in his voice. "It's actually over." "We're safe," Celeste agreed. "We're free. We're family." That night they celebrated. Tommy rode to town and came back with supplies for a feast. Celeste made a proper cake with real sugar. Grace decorated it with wildflowers she'd dried in secret. Jeremiah even broke out a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving for a special occasion. "To new beginnings," he toasted. "To angels in disguise. To Grace's dreams coming true. To family," Celeste added. "The kind you choose." They drank. They ate. They laughed until Grace fell asleep at the table, her head on her arms, a smile on her face. Jeremiah carried her to bed while Celeste cleaned up. When he returned, he pulled her into his arms, swaying gently to music only they could hear. "What are you doing?" Celeste asked, laughing. "Dancing with my future wife. We're in a cabin in the middle of nowhere. There's no music." "Don't need music, just need you." They swayed in silence, Grace sleeping down the hall. Tommy in the barn, the pines whispering outside. Everything that had tried to destroy them had failed. Everything that had tried to separate them had only brought them closer. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," Celeste admitted. "For this to be a dream. For me to wake up back in my father's house, or on that platform, or... You're awake." Jeremiah kissed her temple. "This is real. We're real. And nothing's taking this away. Promise. Promise." Celeste let herself believe it. Let herself sink into the warmth of his arms, the safety of his presence, the certainty of his love. She'd been bought on an auction block by a mountain man who'd seen value where others saw only burden. She'd been saved by a 4-year-old's dreams, and that same little girl's unshakable faith in angels. She'd been broken and remade, sold and reclaimed, lost and found. And now, finally, she was home. The weeks turned into months. Winter settled over whispering pines like a blanket, thick and white and quiet. Celeste learned to love the silence the way the snow muffled sound and made the world feel small and safe. She and Grace spent long afternoons baking, reading, and planning for spring. Jeremiah taught her to shoot properly, and she taught him to make bread the way her mother had. Tommy became less of a hired hand and more of a brother, protective and kind, and easy to laugh. They were a family, strange and patchwork, and made from broken pieces, but a family nonetheless. On the first day of spring, when the snow began to melt and the first flowers pushed through the frozen ground, Jeremiah took Celeste back to the meadow where his wife was buried. "I need to tell her," he said quietly. "About you. About us. She'd want to know." They stood before Sarah's grave hand in hand. Jeremiah talked to his dead wife like she could hear him telling her about Grace's healed arm, about the woman who'd come to save them both, about love finding a way even through grief. "I'll never forget you," he promised Sarah. "But I'm choosing to live again, to love again, and I think—" his voice cracked. "I think you'd approve." Celeste knelt and placed wildflowers on the grave. "Thank you," she whispered, "for saving my mother's deed, for making your husband believe in dreams, for raising a daughter who sees angels. I'll take care of them, I promise." The wind rustled through the new leaves, and just for a moment Celeste could have sworn she heard a woman's voice on the breeze, warm and approving. Welcome home. They were married in June, in a ceremony so small it barely counted. Just Grace as flower girl, Tommy as witness, Mrs. Patterson as officiant since the preacher was sick. They said their vows under the oak tree where Sarah was buried, because Jeremiah said she should be part of it, should know that they honored her memory even as they built something new. Grace cried happy tears. Tommy grinned. Mrs. Patterson declared it the most romantic thing she'd ever seen. And Celeste Hartwell became Celeste Blackwood, wife and mother and landowner woman who'd survived everything the world threw at her and come out stronger. That night, lying in Jeremiah's arms in the bed they now shared, Celeste thought about the girl she'd been on that auction platform. Thought about how terrified she'd been, how certain she was heading toward death or worse. That girl would never believe where she'd ended up. Would never believe that the ghost of Whispering Pines had a heart as big as his reputation. Would never believe that a 4-year-old's dreams could change everything. "What are you thinking about?" Jeremiah asked sleepily. "How far I've come. How much has changed. Any regrets?" "Not a single one." He pulled her closer. "Good. Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse. Till death do us part." "I can live with that." "Me too." Outside, the pines whispered their secrets. Inside, 3 broken people slept peacefully, finally safe, finally whole, finally home. And if sometimes Celeste still woke in the night, heart pounding, afraid she'd find herself back in that cellar or on that platform, Jeremiah was always there to remind her. She was free. She was loved. She was exactly where she belonged. The angel had found her home. But peace, as Celeste had learned, was never permanent. 3 months after the wedding, on a morning that started like any other, everything changed again. Celeste was feeding the chickens when she heard Grace scream. Not a playful scream, a sound of pure terror that sent her running before her brain could catch up. She found Grace in the garden, frozen, staring at something in the dirt. A doll. Grace's rag doll. The one she'd had since her mother died. It had been torn apart. Stuffing scattered. Arms ripped off. And pinned to its chest was a note written in shaky handwriting. "You took everything from me. Now I take everything from you." Celeste's blood turned to ice. She grabbed Grace, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did someone... I just found it like this." Grace was sobbing. "Mama made me that doll. It's all I have left of her, and someone... Jeremiah came running from the barn, Tommy right behind him. One look at Celeste's face, and he knew. "Inside. Now. All of you." They barricaded themselves in the cabin. Jeremiah loaded every gun they owned while Tommy checked the windows. Celeste held Grace, who couldn't stop crying. "Who would do this?" Tommy asked. "Elias is in prison. Dutch is in prison. Who's left?" "I don't know." Jeremiah's jaw was tight. "But whoever it is knows this place, knows what would hurt us most, knows about Sarah." The realization hit Celeste like a physical blow. The doll was Sarah's, from Grace, which means someone who knew Sarah, someone who's been watching us. Jeremiah's hands clenched into fists, someone who's been waiting for us to feel safe. But why now? Why wait 3 months? Because 3 months is how long it takes for people to let their guard down, to stop checking over their shoulders, to believe they're actually safe. Jeremiah moved to the window, scanning the tree line. "It's smart, patient. That's what makes it dangerous." Grace pulled away from Celeste, wiping her eyes. Her face had changed, no longer the carefree child, but something harder, older. "The angels are angry," she said quietly. "They're showing me something. A woman. Someone who loved Daddy once. Someone who thought he'd choose her after Mama died." Jeremiah went very still. "Grace, what are you?" "Rebecca." The name fell from Grace's lips like a stone. "Rebecca Winters. Mama's cousin. The one who came after the funeral and tried to take me away. The one who said you weren't fit to be a father alone." Celeste saw Jeremiah's face go white. "Rebecca's been gone for 3 years. She left after I refused to let her take Grace. I haven't heard from her since. Maybe you haven't been listening." Tommy pointed out the window. "Because someone's walking up the path right now, and she looks like she's got a purpose." They all turned. A woman approached the cabin, tall, thin, with dark hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She moved with the confidence of someone who believed they had every right to be there. "Stay here," Jeremiah ordered. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside, closing the door firmly behind him. But Celeste wasn't about to hide. She positioned herself at the window where she could hear everything. "Rebecca." Jeremiah's voice was cold. "What are you doing here? Is that any way to greet family, Jeremiah? I've come a long way to see you. You destroyed my daughter's doll. You left a threatening note. That's not a social call." Rebecca laughed high and brittle. "Oh, that. Just wanted to get your attention. You always were dense about picking up on subtlety. You have my attention. Now explain why you're on my property before I remove you from it." "Remove me, Jeremiah. I'm here to help you, to save you from the mistake you've made." Rebecca's voice turned pleading. "I heard you married her. That auction girl, that woman your daughter hallucinated about in her grief. And I couldn't let you destroy Sarah's memory like that. Sarah's memory is none of your business. She was my cousin, my blood, and you replaced her with some charity case you bought like livestock." Rebecca's voice rose. "I loved you, Jeremiah. For years I loved you, waited for you. And then Sarah died, and I thought finally you'd see me. But instead, you let a 4-year-old's fantasies dictate your life. Grace's dreams brought me Celeste, and Celeste brought this family back to life. That's not fantasy, that's Grace. Grace is a child who needs a proper mother, not some broken woman playing house." Inside. Celeste flinched. The words hit harder than they should have, because wasn't that what she feared in the dark hours, that she was just playing at being a mother, a wife, a person worthy of this family? Grace grabbed her hand. "Don't listen to her, Mama. She's wrong. You're not playing anything. You're real." Real. Celeste held on to that word like a lifeline. Outside, Jeremiah's voice had gone dangerous. "You need to leave. Now. Before I forget your family." "Family?" Rebecca laughed again. "You don't know what family means anymore. You're so desperate for companionship that you've convinced yourself and that poor child that some stranger from an auction block is meant to be here. It's pathetic, Jeremiah. Sarah would be ashamed." Sarah would love Celeste, because Sarah always saw the best in people, always believed in second chances, always trusted that broken things could be made beautiful. Jeremiah took a step forward. "You want to know what's pathetic, Rebecca? Coming here 3 years later with your bitter jealousy trying to destroy something good because you can't have what you want. That's pathetic. I could give you so much more than she can. I come from a good family. I have money connections, education. I could help you raise Grace properly. Teach her to be a lady instead of what Happy loved whole." Jeremiah's voice could have cut stone. "Grace is perfect exactly as she is, and if you think Celeste isn't teaching her everything she needs to know about being strong and kind and brave, then you weren't paying attention when your cousin was alive, because Celeste is more like Sarah than you'll ever be." The words hung in the air. Celeste felt tears stream down her face, not from hurt, but from the fierce pride in Jeremiah's voice, the absolute certainty. He meant it. Every word. "You're going to regret this." Rebecca said, her voice shaking with rage. "I'll go to the territorial office. I'll file a complaint. I'll tell them you're unfit, that you're living in sin with a... We're married, legally, with witnesses. There's nothing you can do." Jeremiah raised his rifle slightly, not aiming, just reminding. "Now get off my land, and if you ever come near my family again, if you ever threaten them again, I'll do more than just escort you to the property line. Understand? Silence." Then footsteps retreating, fast and angry. Jeremiah stood there until she disappeared into the trees. Then he came back inside, his face drawn. "She's gone. For now." "Will she come back?" Celeste asked. "I don't know. Maybe." He set down the rifle and pulled both Celeste and Grace into his arms. "But if she does, we'll handle it. Together." "I'm sorry," Grace said quietly. "This is my fault. If I hadn't dreamed about Celeste, if I hadn't insisted..." "Stop." Celeste knelt down to Grace's level. "Your dreams saved me, saved all of us. Rebecca's anger isn't because of anything you did. It's because she wanted something she couldn't have, and instead of being happy for your father, she chose bitterness. But my doll? We'll make you a new doll. Or, Celeste looked at Jeremiah. We could go through Sarah's things. See if there's something of hers you'd like to have. Something that reminds you of her in a good way, instead of a sad one. Grace's eyes lit up. Really? Daddy said those things were too precious to... They're precious because they were hers, Jeremiah interrupted. Which means they should be used. Loved, not locked away. He squeezed Celeste's shoulder. You're right. It's time. That afternoon they went through the chest where Jeremiah had stored Sarah's belongings. Clothes books, small trinkets. Grace chose a locket with Sarah's picture inside and a shawl that still smelled faintly of lavender. Celeste found herself holding one of Sarah's dresses, simple but well-made, the kind of practical beauty that spoke to a woman who valued substance over show. Keep it, Jeremiah said. She'd want you to have it. I can't. It's just fabric without someone to wear it, and you're the right size. He touched the sleeve gently. Sarah believed things should be used, should bring joy. Keeping them locked away honors nothing. So Celeste took the dress, altered it slightly to fit, and wore it the next Sunday when Mrs. Patterson came for dinner bringing news from town. Rebecca Winters was seen at the territorial office, Mrs. Patterson said over coffee, making all sorts of wild accusations about you two. But Sheriff Coleman laughed her right out of the building, said any fool could see this was a love match, and even if it wasn't, there wasn't a law against finding happiness after loss. She won't stop, Celeste said quietly. People like her don't just give up. No, but they do run out of ammunition eventually. Mrs. Patterson patted her hand. You've got the law on your side, the land deed in your name, a legal marriage, a happy child. What can she actually do? As it turned out, quite a lot. Over the next month, small things started going wrong. Fences broken, traps sprung empty, garden vegetables dug up in the night. Nothing big enough to involve the law, but enough to keep them constantly on edge. It's her, Jeremiah said after finding their water barrel poisoned. Has to be. She's trying to drive us out, make life so miserable we give up. Then she doesn't know us very well, Celeste replied, already preparing to haul fresh water from the creek. Because we don't give up. But the constant vigilance wore on them. Tommy started sleeping in shifts with Jeremiah keeping watch through the night. Grace stopped playing outside unless someone was with her. Celeste found herself jumping at every sound, every shadow. This wasn't living. This was surviving. And they'd worked too hard to build something real to let it crumble under Rebecca's bitterness. We need to end this, Celeste said one night after Grace was asleep. Confront her. Force her to either back down or escalate enough that the law has to step in. That's dangerous, Jeremiah protested. If she escalates, she's already escalating, just slowly, methodically, wearing us down bit by bit. Celeste grabbed his hands. We either stop her now or we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. She's right, Tommy added. And I know where Rebecca's staying. Saw her in town yesterday renting a room above the saloon. We could... No. Jeremiah shook his head. I won't put either of you at risk. If anyone confronts her, it'll be me. She doesn't want you, Celeste said softly. She wants me gone, so it has to be me. The argument lasted hours, but eventually Jeremiah conceded. They'd go together, him, Celeste, and Tommy. They'd confront Rebecca in town in public, where she couldn't claim self-defense or twist the narrative. They left at dawn, Grace safely with Mrs. Patterson. The ride to Riverside felt like it took forever, every mile heavy with anticipation and dread. They found Rebecca exactly where Tommy said she'd be, sitting in the saloon nursing a whiskey, her eyes red-rimmed and distant. Rebecca. Celeste's voice was steady. We need to talk. Rebecca looked up. For a moment, something like shame flickered across her face. Then it hardened into defiance. Come to beg me to stop. To promise you'll leave if I just... No. Celeste sat down across from her. Jeremiah and Tommy flanked the exits but didn't approach. This was her fight. I came to tell you I understand. Rebecca blinked. You what? I understand what it's like to want something so badly, it consumes you. To watch someone else get what you think should be yours. To feel like the universe is punishing you for no reason. Celeste leaned forward. I understand because I lived that way for 23 years. Watching my father love whiskey more than me. Watching my mother die and leave me alone with a monster. Watching other girls get married while I was too big, too poor, too damaged for anyone to want. Then I know that bitterness destroys you faster than it destroys anyone else. I know that trying to tear down someone else's happiness doesn't build your own. I know that... Celeste's voice softened. I know that you're in pain. Real pain. And I'm sorry for that. But hurting my family won't heal you. Rebecca stared at her. Tears began sliding down her cheeks. I loved him first, before Sarah. I saw him first. But he looked right through me and saw her instead, and I... She choked on a sob. I've spent 15 years loving a man who doesn't even see me. Do you know what that does to a person? I do. But Rebecca, he's never going to love you. No matter what you do to me, no matter how much you try to prove you're better. He chose Sarah, and then he chose me. Not because we're better than you, but because that's how love works. It doesn't follow logic or fairness. It just is. So I'm supposed to just accept that, just walk away. Yes. Celeste reached across the table. You're supposed to walk away and build a life that doesn't revolve around a man who doesn't want you. You're supposed to find your own happiness instead of trying to destroy someone else's. Rebecca looked at Celeste's extended hand, at her face, at the compassion there that she clearly hadn't expected. I can't, she whispered. I don't know how. Then learn. Celeste's voice was gentle but firm. Start by leaving us alone. Stop the sabotage. Stop the threats. And then start asking yourself what you actually want your life to look like. Not with Jeremiah. Just for you. For a long moment, Rebecca said nothing. Then slowly she took Celeste's hand. I'm sorry, she said brokenly. I'm so sorry. I wanted to matter to someone. To be chosen instead of always being the one left behind. Then find someone who'll choose you. Not because you forced them, but because they can't imagine their life without you. Celeste squeezed her hand. That person exists, but it's not Jeremiah. And you need to accept that before you destroy yourself trying to change it. Rebecca nodded, pulled her hand back, wiped her eyes. I'll stop. The sabotage, the threats, all of it. I'll leave Riverside. Start over somewhere else. That's probably wise. For what it's worth. Rebecca looked at Jeremiah across the room. Take care of him, and Grace. They deserve to be happy. I will, Celeste promised. Rebecca stood, dropped money on the table for her drink, and walked out of the saloon without looking back. Jeremiah crossed to Celeste immediately. Are you okay? Yeah, I think she meant it. I think she'll actually leave. Because you showed her mercy. Jeremiah pulled her into his arms. You could have had her arrested, could have pressed charges, could have destroyed her the way she tried to destroy us. But instead, you gave her a path forward. Because I know what it's like to be lost. And several someones gave me a path forward when I needed it most. Celeste looked up at him. We're not breaking the cycle of hurt by adding more hurt. We're breaking it by choosing compassion, even when it's hard. Tommy cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt, but we should probably get moving. Mrs. Patterson will worry if we're gone too long. The ride home felt different, lighter, like a weight they'd been carrying had finally been lifted. Grace met them at the door, launching herself into Celeste's arms. The angels said it worked, said the sad lady finally heard what she needed to hear. The angels were right, Celeste confirmed. Everything's going to be okay now. And it was. Rebecca left Riverside the next day. The sabotage stopped. The constant fear faded into memory. Life settled into a rhythm that felt less like surviving and more like actually living. Celeste took over managing the land she'd inherited, working with the territorial office to sell portions to families who needed it while keeping enough for their own use. The money went into a trust for Grace's future education, marriage, whatever she needed. Tommy married a girl from town and built his own cabin on their property. Grace grew taller, stronger, her cast came off, and her arm healed perfectly. Jeremiah smiled more, laughed more, started talking about expanding the cabin, maybe building a bigger barn. And Celeste. Celeste finally stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. Stopped bracing for disaster. Stopped questioning whether she deserved this happiness. 1 year after the wedding, she realized she was pregnant. She told Jeremiah on a Sunday morning, standing in the meadow where Sarah was buried. It felt right somehow, telling him here in this place where loss and hope intersected. "I'm going to have a baby," she said simply. "Our baby." Jeremiah's face transformed. Joy, wonder, fear, all of it cycling through in seconds before landing on pure happiness. "You're sure?" "The doctor confirmed it yesterday when I went to town with Mrs. Patterson." "How far along?" 3 months. I wanted to be sure before I told you." He dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to her stomach. "A baby. We're going to have a baby. Are you happy? Happy?" He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. "Celeste, I'm terrified and thrilled and grateful and—" He stood, pulling her into his arms. "I'm everything all at once." "Me too." That night they told Grace. She screamed so loud they heard her in the next valley. "A brother. I'm getting a brother." "Or a sister," Celeste corrected, laughing. "The angels said brother." Grace was already planning. "We'll call him Samuel, after Mama's father, and I'll teach him everything: how to talk to trees, how to see angels, how to—" "How about we wait until he's born first?" Jeremiah suggested, but he was smiling. The pregnancy was hard. Celeste's body, already marked by years of poor nutrition and stress, struggled with the demands. She spent weeks on bed rest, frustrated and scared and hating her own weakness. "I should be stronger," she told Jeremiah one night, crying from exhaustion and hormones and fear. "I should be able to do this without what being human." He stroked her hair. "You're doing exactly what you need to do. Growing our child, keeping them safe. That's not weakness. That's the strongest thing there is. What if something goes wrong? Then we'll handle it, together, like we handle everything." But nothing went wrong. On a cold February morning, with Mrs. Patterson acting as midwife, and Grace praying in the next room, and Jeremiah holding her hand so tight she thought it might break, Celeste gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Samuel Blackwood came into the world screaming his fury at the cold, and Celeste fell in love for the 3rd time in her life. "He's perfect," Jeremiah whispered, cradling his son with the same careful tenderness he'd once used to lift Celeste from an auction block. "He's absolutely perfect." Grace burst into the room, unable to wait any longer. She climbed onto the bed, staring at her new brother with wide eyes. "The angels were right," she breathed. "He's exactly what they showed me. Exactly right." Celeste looked at her family, her husband, her daughter, her son, and felt something settle deep in her chest. Not just contentment, not just happiness, but rightness. The bone-deep certainty that this was exactly where she was meant to be. "Thank you," she said, to no one and everyone, to Grace's angels, to Sarah's memory, to whatever force had brought her from that platform to this moment. "Thank you for seeing me when everyone else looked away." The years passed. Samuel grew strong and stubborn, with his father's storm cloud eyes and his mother's fierce determination. Grace bloomed into a young woman who still talked to angels and saw goodness in everyone. Tommy and his wife had 3 children who played with Samuel and called Celeste Aunt. The cabin expanded, the land prospered, the family grew, and every year on the anniversary of that auction, Celeste and Jeremiah would stand on the platform in Riverside, now just an empty square, the auction block long since torn down, and remember. "Do you ever regret it?" Celeste asked on their 10th anniversary. "Spending all that money on a stranger?" "Every day," Jeremiah said seriously. Then he grinned. "I regret not spending more. Should have bid 3,000 just to make sure." She swatted his arm. "Be serious." "I am serious." He pulled her close. "Best $2,000 I ever spent. Bought me a wife, a healed daughter, a son, a life I never thought I'd have again. That's not a purchase. That's a miracle. I was the one who got the miracle. You saved me." "No." Jeremiah cupped her face. "Grace saved you. Her dreams, her faith, her absolute certainty that angels were real, and one was coming to rescue us. I just had sense enough to listen. Then we saved each other." "Yeah, I guess we did." Grace found them there 15 years old and beautiful, with Samuel toddling at her heels. "Mama, Papa, we're going to be late for dinner. Mrs. Patterson will tan our hides if we miss her roast." "Coming, sweetheart." Celeste took Jeremiah's hand, scooped up Samuel with the other. Together they walked away from the empty square toward home. And if sometimes Celeste still woke in the night, heart racing, afraid she'd find herself back on that platform, Jeremiah was always there, his arms steady, his voice certain. "You're home, you're safe, you're loved." And she was. All of it. Everything she'd never thought she deserved, everything she'd stopped hoping for, everything that had seemed impossible that cold morning when a little girl pointed at her and said, "That's the angel from my dreams." Celeste Hartwell had been bought for $2,000, but she'd found something worth infinitely more. She'd found family, found love, found home. And in a cabin high in whispering pines where the wind sang through ancient trees, and angels whispered to those brave enough to listen, she'd found herself. Not broken anymore, not purchased, not lost. Just Celeste Blackwood. Wife, mother, survivor, beloved. Exactly who she was always meant to be. Love isn't found. It's built, piece by piece, by those brave enough to open their door to grace. True family is never just blood. It's the people who choose to stay when storms come. And sometimes the most broken things become the most beautiful when they're given the chance to heal. That's not just survival. That's redemption. That's hope. That's love choosing to believe in tomorrow, even when yesterday tried to destroy you. And that more than anything is what makes us human.